Lord Jesus, we are gathered again Monday night because we love you, we love the written word, and we pray for a blessing on Jay as he guides us through the scriptures tonight. We pray that each one of us will take a step closer to loving you and knowing more about you and just rejoicing at your great love for us. We do love you. We give you thanks and praise. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Jay, can I just say something? I want to thank you all for your prayers. And my surgery went well. It took about a week to really feel better and everything you do. And also, what I was supposed to really tell you is I love you. Oh,
Thank you.
Likewise, Larry.
Thank you. Yes. Thanks, Jay.
So here we are in the book of the Bible's greatest hits. There's no book like this in terms of just huge stories that everybody knows and remembers. And we've seen some incredible stories already. And we're going to have another great one tonight. This book is not a history book in the sense that 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, or 1st and 2nd Chronicles are history books. It's not a detailed history. It's not even really a chronology. It's more of, hey, we were stuck in captivity for 7 years, and here are some of the really big, incredible things that happened. So Daniel's going to go easy on you, or the author of Daniel, for a couple of more chapters here. I've got a couple of stories, both of them very, very famous. And then watch out, because we're going to go right down into the miry pit of apocalyptic imagery. And your minds are all going to be very blown from, say, chapter 7 on as you try to figure out what in the world this is all about. Or at least mine will be. Now, so if you're wondering how come I have a pamphlet here for Bethany, there's a very simple explanation. I have this pamphlet here to remind me to get my bowl of watermelon out of the refrigerator from yesterday's coffee hour before I leave. But here's the problem, this pamphlet, what's going to remind me what this pamphlet means? That's it, see? Nope, it's going to remind me, right? Okay, so I'm going to forget the bowl again. I'm going to be, it's fresh, it's as fresh as you want.
Bowl may be going home empty.
It's pretty nice.
Daniel 5, we have some big themes here, some very important themes. It's a very familiar story from which we have one of the most famous sayings in the entire Bible, and that saying is, the handwriting on the wall. So, would some kind person, some volunteer, like to read chapter 5? We'll read the whole thing because it's one story.
I'll do it.
Great.
The writing on the wall. When King Belshazzar gave a great banquet for 1,000 of his nobles and drank wine with them. While Belshazzar was drinking his wine, he gave orders to bring in the gold and silver goblets that Nebuchadnezzar, his father, had taken from the temple in Jerusalem, so that the king and his nobles, his wives and his concubines might drink from them. So they brought in the gold goblets that had been taken from the temple of God in Jerusalem, and the king and his nobles, his wives and his concubines drank from them. As they drank the wine, they praised the gods of gold and silver, of bronze, iron, wood, and stone. Suddenly the fingers of a human hand appeared and wrote on the plaster of the wall near the lampstand in the royal palace. The king watched the hand as it wrote. His face turned pale, and he was so frightened that his knees knocked together and his legs gave way. The king called out for the enchanters, astrologers, and diviners to be brought, and said to the wise men of Babylon, Whoever reads this writing and tells me what it means will be clothed in purple and have a gold chain placed around his neck, and he will be made the third highest ruler in the kingdom. Then all the king's wise men came in, but they could not read the writing or tell the king what it meant. So King Belshazzar became even more terrified, and his face grew more pale. His nobles were baffled. The queen, hearing the voices of the king and his nobles, came into the banquet hall. "O king, live forever," she said. "Don't be alarmed. Don't look so pale. There is a man in your kingdom who has the spirit of the holy gods in him. In the time of your father, he was found to have insight and intelligence and wisdom like that of the gods. King Nebuchadnezzar, your father the king, I say, appointed him chief of the magicians, enchanters, astrologers, and diviners. This man Daniel, whom the king called Belshazzar, was found to have a keen mind and knowledge and understanding, and also the ability to interpret dreams, explain riddles, and solve difficult problems. Call for Daniel, and he will tell you what the writing means." So Daniel was brought before the king, and the king said to him, "Are you Daniel, one of the exiles my father, the king, brought from Judah? I have heard that the spirit of the gods is in you, and that you have insight, intelligence, and outstanding wisdom. The wise men and the enchanters were brought before me to read this writing and tell me what it means, but they could not explain it. Now I have heard that you were able to give interpretations and to solve difficult problems. If you can read this writing and tell me what it means, you will be clothed in purple and have a gold chain placed around your neck, and you will be made the third highest ruler in the kingdom." Then Daniel answered the king, "You may keep your gifts for yourself and give your rewards to someone else. Nevertheless, I will read the writing for the king and tell him what it means. O king, the Most High God gave your father Nebuchadnezzar sovereignty and greatness and glory and splendor because of the high position he gave him. All the peoples and nations and men of every language dreaded and feared him. Those the king wanted to put to death, he put to death. Those he wanted to spare, he spared. Those he wanted to promote, he promoted. And those he wanted to humble, he humbled. But when his heart became arrogant and hardened with pride, he was disposed from his royal throne and stripped of his glory. He was driven away from people and given the mind of an animal. He lived with the wild donkeys, ate grass like cattle, and his body was drenched with the dew of heaven until he acknowledged that the Most High God is sovereign over the kingdoms of men and sets over them anyone he wishes. But you, his son, O Belshazzar, have not humbled yourself, though you knew all this. Instead, you have set yourself up against the Lord of heaven. You had the goblets from the temple brought to you, and you and your nobles wine, and your wives and your concubines drank wine from them. You praised the gods of silver and gold, of bronze, iron, wood, and stone, which cannot see or hear or understand. But you did not honor the God who holds in his hand your life and all your ways. Therefore he sent the hand that wrote the inscription. This is the inscription that was written. Many, many tekel parsin. This is what these words mean. Many. God has numbered the days of your reign and brought it to an end. Tekel. You have been weighed on the scales and found wanting. Perez. Your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. Then, as at Belshazzar's command, Daniel was clothed in purple, a gold chain was placed around his neck, and he was proclaimed the third highest ruler in the kingdom. That very night, Belshazzar, king of the Babylonians, was slain, and Darius the Mede, took over the kingdom at the age of 62.
Thank you. Very good reading.
I apologize for butchering those names.
I would have butchered them just in that. If that was. So, any general impressions from this wonderful story that we all know so well? Anyone?
You didn't pay attention to the handwriting on the wall.
Like deja vu. It's deja vu.
Yeah.
What's the time frame between father and the tape? I mean, the
Well,
son seems to, like, was he around and he was
That's,
dealing with?
That's like complicated.
Yeah,
So there are pagan historians who chronicle this period, and in addition to what we have here, and their account of it is, let's just say, very confused. But as far as anybody can determine, and again, this is debatable, the term father here really means predecessor, or can mean predecessor. And Daniel is probably, this king that's being described here is probably the grandson of Nebuchadnezzar. And Nebuchadnezzar's son, who was a particularly poor example of the breed of kings, came between and did not rule very long. And also this king did not rule very long, probably about 3 years. So it's very convoluted, and it's sort of hard to untangle. And in fact, as we move forward in the book, we're going to say that he goes back, and then he goes forward in time, and then he gets really crazy with his prophecies. So it's a convoluted mix of things, but there has been a transition. It's been a prolonged transition to this king, and then we're at this spot. And that's way too many words to say something that's simple. But and what other observations do we have about this great story?
But your point is, well, that it's deja vu all over again. It's the same stuff that Nebuchadnezzar has always learned. Now this Belshazzar is learning the same thing.
God's judgment in both Nebuchadnezzar and Belshazzar was immediate.
Yeah, Belshazzar didn't get a second chance.
The other piece that I see is, even though God's people are in exile, those items, the cups, those were dedicated and devoted to God. And this king is treating them with contempt, and God will not stand for it. So it's just like, God's presence is still there, looking after the remnant.
What I'd like to know is what the Israelites are thinking about this scene that's going on. What are they thinking?
I don't think
Why
they're there.
not?
I don't think they're there, because any of them could have read the Hebrew.
Yeah, they weren't actually in the hall, probably.
No, I don't mean in the hall, I mean just the general things of what's going on.
Oh, that's why the story's here.
Oh, I see, okay.
No, this was a matter of extreme outrage. Kind of hard for us to, it's a little hard for us to engage it, because we don't, look, this is Old Testament law stuff. This stuff was all mandated, and it was all very clearly laid out as to what it was supposed to be, and it all represents something. It has some special meaning, and it all reflects heaven, ultimately. And the whole temple was appointed reflects God's kingdom in heaven. And so what was being here, from the Israelites' point of view, was just horrible.
Well, they were worshiping the cups themselves, because they represented God's glory. So it's like Romans says, they credited God for creating things.
I'm not sure it's been made into Hollywood movies, I don't remember ever seeing it, but it's just horror movie stuff. I mean, you've got an ancient thing that has a kind of curse attached to it, but it's not used correctly, and you have this handwriting on the wall out of nowhere. I mean, it's just full of special effects.
Not the whole hand, just the fingers.
Fingers, yeah.
Which is even creepy.
I think the story was almost as much for the Hebrews as it was for the Persians and stuff. I mean, because I think he's making the case for like a singular, all-powerful God, and obviously the Persians and stuff were polytheistic, but they said this is also the period when the Hebrews made the transition from Israelites to Judaism. So I think the story has almost as much, even though it's talking about the Persians, it's almost as much kind of also laying out the case for the Hebrews.
Also, God has firmly established Daniel, I think he had before, but he's number 3 now. And very powerful in the hierarchy of things.
Yeah. It's gonna be very important for the remnant as time is spent with you. Anything else?
He chastised the king pretty good.
He did.
He did, he really laid into him. He didn't hold nothing back. Pretty quick.
Yeah, so what happens next for this poor king is that there's the rise of the empire of, well, initially of the Persians and the Medes. And there's this shadowy character, Darius, who's not really, there's a Darius later on in the Persian Empire. This particular Darius we're not so sure about. But what actually happened was that the Persians came to Babylon, and King Belshazzar just simply wrote this thing and said, okay, go right ahead. There's no attempt at resistance or anything. And to understand how incredible that is, his grandfather, Nebuchadnezzar, had been very powerful and were feared throughout the known world. So this debauchery of his idolatry.
Do we know who killed him?
It's very unclear as to what happened to him. Some historians don't even acknowledge that he exists. This is the thing with historians. Some say that he was given a house of honor in the new kingdom of the Persian Empire. This is often stated about deposed kings and they're given a place of honor. You can never tell whether it actually happened or whether that's just face-saving. It's not really clear, the history here. There's sort of like a period there in the history of the region where you don't have a clear sense of what the details are.
Question. It's interesting how this individual, Belshazzar, doesn't really seem to know Daniel and his background, but yet the queen knows of him. So, and she sort of leads Daniel to him and says, aha. And then it's intertwining. Where's the queen know this individual? And he doesn't.
Yeah, let's talk about that for
Yeah.
just a second. You notice that all of that it says that this king and all of his 1,000 nobles that he brought in from his provinces, this is quite a party, right? Who does it remind you of? Remind you of Esther and Xerxes, his year-long party that he threw. This was equally feudal, and what's interesting is that it does say that all the wives and the concubines and everybody else was already there. What this kind of suggests is that the queen, who comes from a different place, might be who? If his wives and concubines are already at the party, who's this queen? Possibly.
It's just the wife of
Queen Mother.
Neb.
Or maybe even,
Neb's wife.
remember,
Neb's
maybe
queen.
even Queen Grandmother, we're not really
Yeah.
sure.
So,
Yeah.
right.
Somebody, Daniel, seems like Belshazzar never, or he was young, or but he never knew about Daniel. So this is pretty much the end of the Babylonian Empire. So the Medes and Persia, they took over after the Belshazzar was deposed. I think the story is more than God's judgment, because you see, they try to make a mockery of God of Israel. And God, the purpose, He sent the vessels because the God is in His mind, the vessel is going to return after the punishment, they return like home again and that's the way it happens. So they try to defile, like offer like libations to the pagan gods, and God was like God, they have a margin. Sometimes they go over, and the judgment in those situations come right away. That's the lesson here,
So you go too far and they make a mockery, and that sometimes the judgment was sometimes it take a while. In this case, was right word a while by adding, parting, and offering, all kind of the under the pagan calendar. So the judgment come right away.
I think it reminds me of the ark, what happened when Israel's enemies took control of the ark. What fell upon them?
Yeah, they got a plague.
It reached a point where they get this thing out of here. Right?
It's a little bit reminiscent of that.
So here we are again, part of the temple, right?
So it makes an interesting point because you remember under Cyrus, the reason that the Jews venerate Cyrus literally to this day is that he sent them back with his blessing, and I guess only about 45,000 actually went back. But he told them to rebuild the temple, rebuild the wall, and protected them from their enemies there, which were numerous. But you all know the stories of Ezra and Nehemiah. That's something we should study here sometime. Dr. Thomas wrote about that. Great books. But so these vessels got taken back to the temple, which had to be sort of rebuilt and restored. And they were there until the time of Christ. So if you think about this, if what's in the temple and all the objects that are in there, which are mandated and described in the law, if these are symbolic of heaven, then when Christ comes, they aren't needed anymore. So then, of course, we have the final destruction of the temple. So, who knows where those vessels are now, except they show up in Indiana Jones movies.
Speaking of Raiders of the Lost Ark, as we do.
I still find it hilarious that he's in this cave with this knight who's supposed to be from what? The 12th century, and the guy speaks modern English. How'd that happen? He must have a TV down there. I'm not sure. We're all talking about, what is it? Indiana Jones in the Temple of Doom. Silly stuff.
I think the other interesting thing, if you look at Daniel, he's always the bearer. I mean, he's doing the interpretation of all the dreams and the writing and all that kind of stuff. And all the news is not good news for the, they come at the Babylonians and stuff.
Exactly.
So they're all getting, basically wiped out or whatever. Yet Daniel's still kind of hanging in, right? So at some point you would think the message would get,
Let's get rid of this guy.
well, no, you would think, he's surviving through all this stuff, so at some point you'd think the message would resonate.
There's a lot of promotions.
That's what the Queen Mother apparently thought too. Let's just take a look at Daniel's attitude towards his king in starting in verse 17. What do you think about this? Daniel answered before the king, "Let your gifts be for yourself and give your rewards to another. Nevertheless, I will read the writing to the king." What do you think about that as a response to the emperor of a great empire? What does it say about Daniel's? What does it say about Daniel's feelings about this king?
Well, there's a lot going on here.
Well, you can contrast it to what happened when he spoke to you.
Exactly.
And so the deja vu of it is played out differently because it was clear. I think it's clear that he could recognize that Nebuchadnezzar was a man who ultimately did respond. He responded and proclaimed God as God.
Right.
And Belshazzar said, "Here's your reward. Let's go back to the party."
And also, Tim, just along that line, he also, there's a fundamental difference between Nebuchadnezzar and his grandson, and that Nebuchadnezzar, although he conquered, and as Daniel says, he conquered and slew right and left and knocked over nations. He was a king who showed respect for their parents. Yeah. So this is a mark of many of the great emperors of the past, that although they are ruthless, pitiless, conquerors, they nonetheless show respect for the local customs and the local gods, which this king clearly did not do. And unfortunately, he picked the god that could do something about it. Yeah.
But also maybe the difference, if Nebuchadnezzar was the guy doing the conquering, he knew what it took to kind of recognize some of those local things to kind of control it. Now you have your grandson. It's kind of never kind of inherited it and probably didn't understand those kind of, what it took, those nuances to kind of respect some of the other people.
Yeah, Daniel kind of makes it pretty clear, you were not your father.
Mm-hmm.
You're a somewhat lesser emperor. And we can see that also with Caesar Augustus. You know, everybody who studies Roman history, he's their favorite emperor. And he showed the same kind of tolerance towards local traditions and gods, but not his ancestors, like Nero and Caligula. I mean, even Marcus Aurelius, who everybody claims to be so much in love with, was a persecutor, a strong persecutor of the Christians.
This is remembered by the Hebrews. Still, we're told, they must have really enjoyed it. It's kind of like reliving a victory, you know, of your rival, the group that took you, the descendants, and brought them to a foreign country and racked at your temple and to come up with. Yeah.
Very important story for Jewish life. This story, very important. This book's not in the Bible by any accident, by any means. This is here because this stuff was read, pored over, studied, repeated, commented on, and became part of, as Rob was saying, this became part of Judaism. You know, it's no longer a bunch of people trying to start a country, but it's now kind of fully evolved into something that's religious tradition, memory.
And also is the hope God gave to them. God said, if you read Jeremiah 29, the parallels is be obedient to in your welfare, or if you obey the king of Babylon, and so even there I prosper. And Daniel, as you mentioned, Nehemiah and Ezra, those people always God put some people close to the king or whatever can influence and be a voice for the Jewish people that those are in captivity. But you see, most of them, the first reason they are in exile because they go after the other gods, so idolatry. So they have now plenty of gods. Most of the people, they embrace the paganism, and all a few remnant was faithful to the God of Israel, like the tradition, always history, all and Christianity, same thing. Only a few remnant are faithful, and then after when they come back was pretty much the tribe of Levi, Judah, but all a few remnant. They are far away; it's 1,000 miles from today is the country of Iraq to the land of Israel is far away. But most of the people they adapt to the paganism, and a few they build synagogues and they become, you know, they settle down even in that pagan environment.
Yeah, although as we do see from Esther, although they did not all return, and obviously Esther and Mordecai did not return, still some of those in exile honored the God of Israel and honored his traditions. You know, it's interesting that another point to be made here is both said, although the dispersion of the Jews was a horrible thing for them, it actually led to the transmission of God's word and respect for God in many diverse places. And you see this throughout the ancient histories. The Jews were a small presence in other lands in numbers and perhaps in some sense in influence, although in this case not so much. But they far outweighed that in the message they brought of the real one true God to all of these nations that they got resettled in. Not even close. No other religion and no other God had the kind of currency that Jehovah had in all of these lands where the Jews were dispersed to. And this is a clear example of it, the Queen Mother coming in and saying, "You idiot, what are you doing here? Let's get the real dude in here and see what this is all about." And so what was it that got this king to do this thing, to have these vessels brought out? Here in verse 2. What shall we say inspired him to this blasphemy?
Fun.
Yeah, when he had tasted the wine for 5 or 6 hours straight. Yeah, so this is just, there's just no meaning, value at all in what this guy's doing. And I think the repetition of the wives and the concubines all drinking from these vessels is also meant to bring this home. This was not your normal, as Joe said earlier, this was not your normal desecration. This was more like an attempt at humiliating of the people of Israel. Boastful drinking.
Jay, it's a modern day story. I saw this clip of John Belushi mocking the cross of Christ. And when I saw it, I was just so shocked. And a short time after that, he died. I don't know if it was on Saturday Night Live, it was probably 40 years ago.
And the reading from yesterday gave us a little advice about the reading from Ephesians, Galatians, God not going to be mocked. Over time, whatever you sow, you're going to reap. That's a law since the beginning of God. You see, God is patient to go, and sometimes, but you put like a margin. Years ago, we don't have those books no more. You still have, you write it, but you have the margins for your own or the purpose. You don't write after that, keep inside, and like a boundary, and that's the, and today we live in the same almost the pagan environment. They make a mockery over, especially in the college, especially this kind of college universities. You see, always in the people that think that they are sophisticated, was that more. They try more, they mock the God, mock Christianity, or not only Christianity, the other religion. You see, even when Paul went, you remember Paul in Rich Athens, he started in Marsville, where he proclaimed the word to Epicureans and Stoic philosophy. What happened over there? Paul started preaching a totally different way, but what they say to him in the end? We hear this babbler another time. You see, they even call him a babbler. See, that's the try ridicule and in that sophisticated people that think they are very, very intellectual and.
Yeah, we see in Acts though that even the sophisticated people of Athens, places like that, they were not unreceptive to false message. So they have a mixture of people in all places, and some sophisticated people today are not receptive to the cross of Jesus Christ, as George is pointing out. But you know what? Some people are. So not our job to talk to the ones that aren't.
No, but-
Shake the dust off our feet when it comes to them, but it is our job to try to carry the message forward and to help people not to fall into this trap and make this mistake of mocking God and being disrespectful to Him. Why does Daniel bring up the example of Nebuchadnezzar to his grandson? What's the reason for it? Starting in verse 17. And it could be father, but I think it's safe to read grandfather because we do know that there was a son who reigned after Nebuchadnezzar. Yes, whose prefix to his name was evil, so that sets him apart, doesn't it? Well, what's the reason that Daniel brings up Nebuchadnezzar?
I think because God humble himself when you try those, another law, those result themselves, they be humble and those understand those result. And they were, God would punish him 7 years when he put like an animal, like eat grass and everything to remind them the God Israel humble those young when they resolve those, and that God is in control. And remind, I think, to remind this king what happened to him, you know, the way God humbled himself. In this case, I think it seemed like he was judged right away, so you don't give like 7 years to go like to be like humiliate. That's exactly the word.
Yeah, Tim mentioned, right, it's contrasted.
Verse 18, keeps God. God gave Nebuchadnezzar got full of himself, God took it away. And then Nebuchadnezzar humbled himself. And then he says, you knew all this, in verse 22. You knew all this, but you still have lifted your heart up against the Lord. Refused to humble yourself. So, it's not that Belshazzar was taken by, or perhaps he was taken by surprise, but it's not that he couldn't see it coming, if you will. Right?
He should have been able to see it.
He should have been able to see.
He was just letting him know that you're in trouble, buddy.
And now, of course, you know, we just read that incredible story that he's talking about here. It's just an incredible story. And there's Nebuchadnezzar walking around on the palace roof, and he looks around and he says, look how mighty I am. And what happens to him? He loses his mind. He loses his mind. Well, what did Belshazzar do that Nebuchadnezzar never did? There's a big contrast being drawn here.
Well, I was thinking, just kind of defiling the chalice of
And he never, although he was definitely a person of problems, he never made fun or mocked God. That's the big contrast that Daniel's drawing here. You're going to fall because you didn't just act proudly. You did what your grandfather did not do, and you mocked God.
It's almost like there's lines of foolishness and there's lines of evil, different degrees. It's like he crossed his mind. It's serious.
So let's go to the famous stuff. Now that we've talked about the heavy deep things, now we can get to the horror movie stuff that Father Jim was talking about before. What do you make of this? These fingers that suddenly appear.
I'm thinking of the stone tablet.
Commandments.
Is that the first 7 or
spooky image, isn't it? Don't forget that we're sitting with electric lights, so the thoughts are thinking, "You're not getting these fingers stroked here." Right? But they were in, I'm sorry, Jim.
Right. Well, they said it was opposite the lampstand. Now, is this lampstand from the temple also?
Well, it isn't said, it isn't said that it is.
Oh,
It's probably one of these sconces that they have hanging from the, you know, the slaves will all light all the candles on them, you know, like in the robe. Yeah. But here's the thing, we think of a room, a party, being like, lighted like this. No. They were lighted by candles. There was smoke all over the place. These guys were all bombed, right? And so there were shadows everywhere and places we could, and the king's sitting there, ha, 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 drinks more out of the holy vessel. And he looks up, and up there in the smoky wall, in the semi-dark by a candle stand, or possibly by a sconce suspended from the ceiling, he sees this shadow. So you know what, we don't really know what that was, but it had an effect on him.
It's sober the weather.
He was petrified. Yeah, the more he thought about it, the more petrified he was.
his knees knocked together.
They actually said that he pooped himself.
I think that comes up later on.
That's too much.
Yeah. More than we want to know, right?
What translation is
I mean, there's a line between spooky and gross, you know? Yeah. Yeah, he is absolutely terrified by what he sees. It's not like, what's going on over there? You know, it's more like, what is this? It's
Well,
terrifying.
maybe he had second thoughts of using those vessels that came out of the temple. You know, maybe he was thinking about that. Shouldn't I? You know, like he said, mocking God in his heart, and boom, you know.
What did he do that made it impossible for him to bring any harm to Daniel for his interpretation?
He made him the third highest ruler.
Yeah, from the star. Yeah.
Similar to what Ned
He
did
declined
to
it.
him.
Even though he declined it, he didn't want it.
We also offered it up before Daniel came up. So in other words, once he put it out on the table, once Daniel came through, he couldn't, he had to give him the third, he had to give him the position at least.
You have to.
Well, yeah, but,
They're all
Well,
what
no,
I said.
he had to.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah,
Okay.
once you do that publicly,
John the Baptist.
you
Yeah.
have to do it.
Okay.
In this culture.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, this is like American politics. No, this is totally different.
Yeah, right.
Once you make
It's
a
not, it's
point.
not as bad as American politics.
And so the hand writes this mysterious message in Hebrew that, of course, none of the king's wise men can read because they don't know the language.
He probably recognized it was Hebrew. He might not have been able to understand it, but he might have recognized
He might have.
that was it.
Doesn't say that, but he might have.
Right? Sorry to see.
I'm going on a ledge on this one. Sounds like an assassination.
Assassination.
Yes. I mean, it could be divinely led. Because I find this, the presentation of this is that his writing, obviously it's Hebrew. Was it Persian? He was Persian. Or was it what? So,
Well,
and obviously, he reacted enough that he knew, and he got scared. It's like graffiti on the wall, president, or somebody coming through, whatever. Sounds like his administration had problems, probably were threats. And next step, he sees this, and all of a sudden the queen comes out of nowhere. Well, this guy knows what this means, and then that night, he's killed. You know, it's like,
maybe the Queen of Darius the Mede had a little.
I don't know, it just, I mean, it could be, you know, directed by God,
Right.
however you want it, you know, it was like,
Right.
the way, I mean, what would have happened if he wasn't assassinated at night, or slain, whatever words you want to use for it? If he had gone the route of Neb, where he had been, that cycle again, where maybe woke up a little bit and, or not, but, you know, it's not good.
I was thinking the same thing, I think he was very vulnerable, and everybody in the circle saw it, he was on God. Somebody took him out.
Yeah, I mean, it happened that evening. I mean, it's like, boom.
Yes, except you also have to throw in or consider the prophecy from Nebuchadnezzar's dream. So going back to parallels, Nebuchadnezzar dreamed of the statue with the feet of clay. And prophecies typically work with multiple levels, so there's a messianic element to it, but there's also a very a more contemporary prophecy for Nebuchadnezzar's time that implied that his kingdom would not last because something would come along and destroy it.
Yep.
And so, I totally agree, God's hand divinely.
However,
Divinely
whoever was a
plays
man was a
out.
god, but
Yeah.
this guy was going down that night. No matter what water he's going.
Yeah,
So
the
it's-
spoiler alert for
Yeah.
you is that this is the turning point event that leads to King Cyrus and the restoration of the captives, sent back to Israel, allowed to rebuild the wall, allowed to restore the temple. This is the turning point. So the real significance of this story is this is the fall of the captives. And they're about to be conquered. The conquerors are about to be conquered. And the reason he died was that they were overrun by the Medes and Persians, and then by just the Persians, because after that the Persians overran the Medes. So
the wolves were at the door.
the wolves were
Already,
at the
this point.
door.
They're ready to come in.
Yeah. And you could think of it that maybe God held off this judgment until this happened, until he called out these holy vessels.
Well, God saw, like how Nebuchadnezzar reacted to when he threw Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego into the furnace. He saw that, his eyes were opened. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So he's got a little bit of history here that would mean God would deal with him a little bit differently than Belshazzar.
Right.
So.
What do you think of these words that this spooky hand is writing? Mena, Mena, Tekel, and Parson.
I don't read Hebrew, but from what Daniel said here, it sounds like the numbered, if we say thing is numbered, weighed, and parcel.
Parson, excellent. Parson, yes. Numbered, weighty, parcel, or divided.
It's almost like maybe it's been going on for a while, this judgment.
The judgment. Anybody get a little spooked when they see this? Am I the only person in the room that finds this a little spooky? I mean, I understand it happened a long time ago to this king, but what about us?
You don't fool with God.
Don't fool with God. What does this say? If God is doing this to him, what's he doing with us? Same exact thing, right?
I mean, drinking of the cups there is like an abomination to God. And, yeah, exactly. Abominations are not treated kindly.
Sometimes talk ends, it's time for action. And it's a show, this was it.
What I've seen in this, like even going back a couple of weeks, is how God's faithfulness. Like this is a book of Daniel, right? But there isn't a book of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, right? But when it came to them getting thrown into the furnace, God was faithful to them, just the same way He is to Daniel. Which means that applies to all of us here also. Do you really believe, you're supposed to be believing this? You're supposed to believe this, that, whatever he reads in here, God has done what he can do. You're supposed to believe that applies to you too. Because who was Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Wasn't it Daniel, right? He was a believer. And that's what we are. We're believers. And it applies to us 100%.
Yeah, I think that was was thinking, Jenny, that although we apply this to this king, it also means that God's also numbering and counting arguments. So it's just a sobering thought that, while we're rejoicing over God's triumph or his judgment against this blasphemy king, who nobody can be sympathetic with, at the same time, let us hope that it never comes to counted, weighed, and divided for you. So, to me, it's a sobering thing. This handwriting on the wall, you know why? Because we go through life, and you know what? There could be handwriting on the wall lots of times. Are we paying attention to it?
Well, not actual handwriting, but yes.
It doesn't have to be actual handwriting done by the finger of God, but we see things through our lives, and are we paying attention? Are we paying attention? It's important.
I think it's also interesting that they have this thing where he talks about he praised the gods of silver, gold, bronze, iron, wood, and stone. Because it gets back to Tim's point, those were all the stuff that really, that dream for Neb's and basically a statue type of thing. So it's like coming around full circle.
Yeah. And let us not forget that we have certain things that we worship that are not holy. And living in the wealthiest country ever to have been even imagined just simply makes us more vulnerable to these things. Idols are lives. And Jesus' teaching makes it very, very plain that we will be counted, weighed, and sorted. Matthew 25. Pretty clear. So it's a note of victory for, not for Daniel, but for our God, and a note of warning to kings everywhere, as Mary says in her incredible Magnificat, that God throws down the mighty from the thrones, lifts up the poor and the humble. That's also a sobering thing for us, I think, to think about. The fact that God is real. And we have little kingdoms of our own that we get a little too proud of, or a little too neglectful of.
George is talking about what Belushi did. I mean,
Yeah.
God didn't waste much time in that, did he? I gotta tell you about an experience I had when I used to work in the field on computers, and I was working with a guy one night, and he had a daughter, right? And he didn't want a child, and he was always railing about this child, little girl. I'm not going to spend it at college. I ain't going to do this. I don't want this kid. Yada yada yada. And like maybe about 2 weeks later, he died of aneurysm. I had seen times where God takes obstructions out of his life. You know what I mean? He had pity on that child. I mean, it must have been, can you imagine what life would be like? You know, if he would have lived, he actually said that he named her Oops. I mean, it sounds funny, you know what I'm saying? But I mean, that's to the lengths that he went, the hatred for this child. And God, and like Lou was telling, like one of our sons married down south, and his wife and even some of his children were very abusive towards him. Very abusive towards him. And he passed away maybe about a year or so ago. And she came for prayer like on this Saturday morning about that and so on and so forth. And I said, I fully believe that God said, enough is enough. You're not going to have him, my child, as a beating post any longer. And so he took him with him. I believe that God does that.
There's a passage in Hebrews, and I think that at the close of this, I just really feel in my heart that, that the mercy and forgiveness and the love of Christ. But I'm going to read this passage. Anyone who rejected the law of God, anyone who rejected the law of Moses died without mercy on the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. Hebrews chapter 10. How much more severely do you think a man deserves to be punished who has trampled the Son of God underfoot, who has treated as an unholy thing the blood of the covenant that sanctified him, and who has insulted the Spirit of grace? For we know him who said, "It is mine to avenge, I will repay." And again, the Lord will judge his people. It is a dreadful thing to fall into the hands of the living God.
Thank you. That's a very good one.
You know, they say that, that in Pompeii, when the volcano blew, the soldiers who destroyed the temple were actually vacationing there because it was a vacation spot. And they said that the actual soldiers that destroyed the temple were there, and they
Buried. Buried in
Yeah.
age.
I just saw that on a History Channel. I thought that was kind of interesting.
What a great story. And what a great book this is. And you can see why so much the children of Israel that they with their own scriptures.
One more thing, it appears that Daniel's getting his name back. Because the queen says he was Belshazzar, but he's Daniel.
So that
And
leads
he's-
to a very complicated question of who wrote this book,
Yeah.
which would cause us to go on for weeks and weeks of discussion. But yes, the book appears to have several authors, and among them might be Daniel. We know one of the authors was Nebuchadnezzar because we have his letter
Right.
in here. So yeah, there appear to be several authors. Very complicated subject.
Oh, no, no.
Do you mind if we pray? Let's say a prayer. I'm now open, and please feel free to pray. I'd like to invite the Holy Spirit to come into the room and fill our hearts. And if you want to pray for something, don't be bashful. Please speak up. But I would like to say, let's remember to give thanks and to praise God, because you know God is enthroned on the praise of God. So let's include that. Let's pray. Give thanks and pray and all the other things. Heavenly Father, thank you for this time tonight. Thank you for your Holy Bible. Thank you for the things that make us serious and the things that make us think. Thank you for this example of your power and of the fact that you're not to be taken lightly. Now we come before you with our prayers and petitions. Come, Holy Spirit, fill the room. Let our hearts be